Hello and welcome to Transmission. Tonight I am joined by the lovely Ashley.
Thank you.
Welcome, welcome. Now, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, about, you know, who you are?
Who I am? Well, I'm just like any ordinary person, really.
Yeah.
I love to go out and do karaoke. I have a great social life. Just recently won a karaoke competition, which is fantastic.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I'm off to the snow in another 3 weeks, which is great.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it. Like I said, just like any ordinary person, really. Yeah.
And so I suppose just like any other person, just with, you know, that you, I suppose, identify as a trans woman?
No, not trans woman. Just a woman.
Just a woman?
Just a woman, yeah.
And who happens to be trans?
Who happens to be trans, yes. Yeah.
So how long have you sort of been identified and been sort of out as a female?
As a female?
Yeah.
Probably been out for about 1.5 years now. Mm-hmm. I first transitioned when I was 21. Mm-hmm. I was in a relationship that broke down, started my transition, met another girl, and I turned around to her when we first got together and said, look, I can't be with anybody who doesn't accept me for who I am, which is fair enough, you know. We all want to be ourselves. Yeah. And so she was fine with it. We dated for about 1 year, and then I was just about to start hormone treatments, and she wanted me to slow it down a little bit. So we slowed it down, didn't start the hormones, and then she said, all right, well, I don't want you to go out in public as a girl anymore. So I stopped doing that, because by this stage I'd fallen in love with her and everything. We all know how it goes. Yeah. And then then she stopped me from going to work as a girl, stopped me from going outside as a girl, and then stopped me from dressing full-time in the house as a girl. So I was basically back to being a guy again full-time. I managed to suppress that for probably another 10 years, and then had massive breakdowns and decided I had to change again. So I went on and transitioned, broke up with her, and got divorced, and retransitioned again, and haven't been happier since.
Wow. So what was that like, I suppose, because a lot of people talk about sort of coming out and starting the transition process, and sort of, I suppose, going through all of those emotions and then and everything, and then suddenly happening to sort of feeling as though you have to step back and go back to what sort of made you unhappy. Yeah,
that was hard. That was probably one of the hardest things I've ever done, to try and suppress it after you've come out, and you know, family knows and everybody else knows, and then coming out and saying, well, I'm actually going to live as a guy again. And it's like, well, hang on. You know, it sort of confuses everybody as to what's going on. So coming out the second time made that a little bit harder. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because I suppose people would be like, oh, well, you know, you've already said this before.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Was there anything easier the second time around, though?
I think society in general. In the 10 years between the two transitions, I noticed that society in itself had actually gained more acceptance of trans people, which was absolutely fantastic. It made my second transition much better, much easier. So, yeah.
And because you're from a rural area, how has that been? So did you transition whilst living in that area?
Yeah. I come out to pretty much everybody, really. Transitioning in a rural area, people think, you know, they're all country hicks, and especially people from the city, you know, had this idea that they'll all drive around in big four-wheel drives and everything like that. But realistically, they're just like anybody else out there as well. The acceptance of trans people in Ballarat actually really surprised me when I come out. They were really supportive, really supportive, because, you know, one minute I'm dressing as a cowboy, literally dressing as a cowboy, going to the pubs, doing karaoke, and then the next week I'm full-on makeup, dresses, going to the pubs, singing girl songs. So, you know, it was a little bit different, and every now and again I'd get up and just do a bit of a a guy song, you know, throw in a blue suede shoes, or you know, it's something like that, just to turn a few heads and see what sort of reaction I get. But the reaction is really good. Yeah. So the acceptance is fantastic.
Yeah. That's really good. So, you've mentioned sort of the karaoke. So was it literally as much as that you were singing sort of male singing artists, and then just?
Well, it sort of was. Like I said, I continued singing guy songs while looking like a girl, and I found that I was like getting a lot of really weird looks. Yeah. People getting very confused as to what the hell was going on. So, I started to learn more feminine songs. Started out with Pink and Mama Cass and you know, all those really cool songs. Yeah. Started out singing those, and now I'm up to singing Evanescence and the really high pitched. Right up there.
So did you have to sort of train your voice?
I have had a lot of voice training to get my voice to where it is. So.
Yeah. And what sort of does that involve, like in terms of?
Well, the Monash Voice Clinic is the one I went to. I found their program to be really, really good and really helpful. When I first went there, they weren't sure what to do because my voice in itself hasn't actually changed much. I've just, as they've put it there, I've created more resonance in my voice. So, I don't know.
Sounds cool.
Yeah, exactly. It's words that they use, I guess.
Yeah.
They didn't know exactly what to do, so that's what they focused on, was building the resonance in my voice. Yeah. So.
And have you noticed, because you said your voice hasn't actually changed, have you noticed your range
My
changing?
vocal range as far as singing goes has. Yeah. And I think that does come down to training my voice to do it, so.
Yeah, because I suppose, because hormones and things taking sort of female hormones doesn't necessarily change much.
It doesn't, not as far as your voice goes, no. It doesn't change a lot.
Yeah, so then you're sort of trying to work with that.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
So how did you sort of get linked in with sort of doing that sort of voice coaching and all that sort of?
Through my psychologist or psychiatrist years, asked me if I wanted to go through voice training. All my friends turned around and said, you don't need it, don't worry about it. And me being as insecure as I am, I decided, well, if he's offering it, then maybe I do need it. Yeah. So I decided to go through with the program, and so.
And is it something that you would sort of, are you happy that you went through that program?
Look, I am, because it has helped me in some regard. So I am happy I did it, but look, all my friends think I'm mad for doing it, but you know, it didn't cost too much, and it helped me to gain more confidence in myself. So which is great, because I mean, confidence in self makes people happier. And, exactly.
And all that sort of stuff. So look, thank you so much for coming on and giving us such, you know, a little bit of an insight into your life. Good luck with the karaoke championship in a couple of weeks.
Well, I've actually already won. That was the last competition I was in. I'm actually looking to do the World Championships now.
Okay, well, good luck.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for coming on. You've been watching Transmission. Hello and welcome to Transmission. Tonight I am joined by Mish Pony.
Yep.
Welcome to Transmission.
Thank you for having me.
No worries. Now, I suppose wanting to know a little bit sort of about you. So can you give us a little bit of a rundown? So who is Mish?
I'm a 27-year-old queer trans woman. My pronoun is they. I'm a sex worker activist. I've also done a lot of queer activism over the years. I'm a dog owner, a dog lover, lots of things.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So you said that you're sex worker activist. So how long have you been involved with that?
Yeah, so I've been involved in sex work for maybe the past, off and on for the past 7 years, and sex worker activism for maybe 6 years. And I definitely came to sex worker activism through doing like university queer activism and that kind of stuff. Yeah. Yeah, but got introduced to Scarlett Alliance, which is the Australian Sex Workers Association, through a friend who I was living with who was working for them at the time.
Yeah. And so what sort of roles, I suppose, do you take in that?
So for a number of years, I've been the admin officer for Scarlett Alliance, but I took a break for 2 years to go travelling. I've also been the elected trans representative for Scarlett Alliance. I also did a brief stint as the international spokesperson. I've gone to Papua New Guinea about 3 times for a couple of weeks at a time to support the capacity development project over there, and just done other like workshops, conferences, lots of things.
Cool.
Yeah.
And what do you enjoy sort of most about doing that sort of the activism?
I suppose the sex worker activist community is really amazing, politically switched on and politically engaging. It's not just about sex work activism, it's like a whole cross-section of things like to do with racism, classism, sexism, trans misogyny, etc., and like all these things come together to help inform our practice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I suppose being sort of the trans representatives, do you notice, is there sort of transphobia or anything like that within the sex worker community, or is it more sort of a external community type thing?
I suppose in the movement that I'm involved in and the areas that I work around, like I suppose there is like a great acceptance of trans people in sex work, but I think the sex worker community, like any community, has a broad cross-section of views and attitudes, and definitely there are some transphobic aspects of it, and like I've heard stories of particular brothels and workplaces that aren't that great for trans people, but you know, where I am at the moment, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so sort of been doing work for sort of seven years, and I suppose within your own sort of story of sort of transition and stuff, when did you sort of first start to transition?
Yeah.
For better term?
So I suppose I started thinking about gender more when I was 20, and then started taking hormones, or wanted to start taking hormones when I was 21. It's hard to keep track of when everything happened.
Yep.
Yeah, and so I was working before I started taking hormones, but I think I'd already started thinking about gender, so I wasn't strictly identifying as a guy, but I was working as a guy at the time. Yeah.
And so started taking some hormones, and then so how long were you sort of taking hormones for?
Yeah, so I stopped working when I was taking hormones initially just because it was really hard to get my head around the changes that were happening to my body and working stuff out. Yeah. I took hormones probably continuously for maybe 5 years, and then decided to take a break. I think I was overseas and I'd actually run out, and so I just stopped taking them for a while and noticing some changes to my body that I actually quite liked. So I stopped taking them, then started taking testosterone for a while off and on just to see what that would do to my body, and then stopped taking T, and then now I'm hormone free for about just over a year, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so in terms of stopping taking hormones altogether, how has that been for you? Like, has that been, because, you know, when people talk about starting hormones and things like that, there's mood swings, there's all those sorts of stuff?
I suppose those kinds of things weren't really noticeable for me. I find I ride change really easily, and so I didn't really notice huge mood swings or huge drastic changes in my body. But you know, the things that happened from stopping stopping hormones in generally, I found really positive. Just slight changes to my body, changes to my sex drive after stopping estrogen. It really helped with sex and with sex work, and I really enjoyed those changes. Yeah.
Cool. And so you said that when you first went on hormones, you sort of stopped doing sort of sex work for a period.
Yeah.
What did you sort of notice? Did you notice sort of differences before you started taking hormones and after when you returned to sort of working in sex work? Did you notice sort of like major differences?
Yeah, like total major difference in clientele, in what people wanted me to do or expected me to do. Like I suppose as a boy, I was quite young and twinky and quite femme, which actually worked against me a lot of the time because I was too feminine to be a guy. Basically, is what I actually was told by one brothel manager. Yeah. But then working as a trans woman later on, there is that pressure to be feminine, which is a negative and a positive in some ways. And yeah, just different sex roles, different clientele who are heterosexual or bisexual, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Have you found that sort of over the period where your body sort of changed and sort of, has the comfort within your body ever been sort of an issue, or is that not sort of played a...
I suppose like I've always had a lot of issues with my body, and being uncomfortable in your body is really hard if you're doing sex work, because you've got to be really confident in it, and like that's what you're there for. But yeah, like I suppose I'm definitely at a point now and have been for a number of years where I'm quite proud of my body and I'm really comfortable in it. Yeah. And that's had to do with access to things like surgery and, yeah, being like in control of my body.
Yeah, so has that sort of made, I suppose, working a bit easier because of that comfort?
I don't know. I think it's hard to separate it just into one thing because there's also the issues of being more mature, being more experienced, being able to negotiate things better, which, you know, it's definitely easier if you're comfortable in your body, but it's also many other factors. I
suppose that that being older and being able to negotiate and things like that, has that, through doing all your activism and things, has that sort of also improved with that?
I don't know. It's hard to say because I feel I'm very different people when I'm being an activist or being a sex worker, and I don't see the roles overlapping that much. But I suppose, confidence in one area can spill over to confidence in the other area, but you know, what comes first?
Yeah, exactly. And so you said that you'd also done some queer activism. Are you still doing sort of queer activism outside of sex work?
Yeah, I suppose I am in a context that's people might not notice as queer activism, and that I suppose would be my land project, which is a queer land project that I've started up with some friends. We bought a rural block of land kind of in the middle of nowhere and want to eventually turn it into a self-sustaining communal living situation for queer people, like specifically with a focus of queer women.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah. I'd actually really like to ask more about that, but we're running out of time, unfortunately. But thank you so much for coming on and having a bit of a chat to us. So big thanks to Mish. You've been watching Transmission.
Welcome back to Transmission on Bent TV. I'm Sammy Cameron, and today we're talking about changing your ID. Joining me today are Sally, Robyn and Dale. Thank you for joining us today. Having the correct identification is essential to being able to live in modern society. So we wanted to start talking about how to go about officially changing your name in Victoria. How do you go about changing your name?
Basically, rock up to birth, deaths and marriages in the state that you're in, and they can probably liaise with the state you're born in and fill out a form and pay a fee and get documents.
And you have to provide some identification? Is it really that easy?
Yeah.
Fill in a form.
Yeah.
With your old birth certificate. The hard part is picking the name.
Yeah. Well, hopefully you've done that before you go into the office. You don't want to get the people in the office to ask you, what name do you think I should be called?
Yeah. People change their mind at inopportune moments. But yeah, so you've got to have your original copy of your original birth certificate before you can start anything.
Okay. And what about if you're changing your name from one sort of gendered name to another gendered name? Are there any restrictions on those sorts of things?
No.
Wow.
No. As long as it's not offensive.
Okay.
Yeah, the gender in itself, in simple terms, is not the issue.
Okay.
In all states and territories. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Okay, so what do we talk about passports? Because if you want to travel overseas, you want the gender marker that says what gender you are to be correct. So is it easy to change your passport?
Yes, you just need a letter from a GP and then appropriate documentation to go to the passports office, and it's based on affirmed identity since September 2011, which is really cool.
And are there more than 2 letters that you can choose from in Australia?
Yes, we have the option now of an X as well, and there is also, for our friends who identify as intersex, there's also greater respect for them as well. So, yeah, passports have come a pretty long way.
Okay, so you need to get a letter from your GP.
Yeah.
Collect paperwork, go through all the fun stuff of applying for a passport, and it's relatively straightforward.
Yep, and an interview. They usually like to interview. I'm on my 3rd passport. So, yeah, they like to make sure that you are who you are, and a quick talk, nothing too traumatic, just a quick talk. This is who you are, this is what you want to do. And, yeah, you got the paperwork.
So with those 2 documents, we can pretty much survive with most of the things we need to do in society. We've got a gender marker in our passport and our name is changed. Does it cost any money to change your name and gender in your passport?
Yes.
It does?
Yep.
Okay. And I suppose it costs money to change your name as well?
Yes, there's a fee. There's a fee,
Okay. Okay, so let's talk about birth certificates, because I think birth certificates aren't quite as easy, are they?
No. No. Birth certificates are an official document that everything else revolves around. And the birth certificate's okay, but there's no death certificate for your old name. So you've got 2 birth certificates. Not on paper, they take one off you, but as written down, say at the tax department or something, you're 2 people.
Okay. And if you want to get a new birth certificate that's got your new name and your affirmed gender on there, what do you have to do?
You have to go through sex affirmation surgery in all states except for the ACT at this point.
Yep.
So the government has decided that that's what we need to do.
Yes.
We actually have to have surgery.
Yes.
So they've decided for us that if we want to change our sex or gender marker on our birth certificates, then we have to have surgery.
Yeah.
And it can only be changed on a state-by-state basis. So it's changed in one state so far, but in order to change the other ones, we would have to lobby each state individually to change the laws.
Because the birth, deaths and marriages legislation is state-based.
Yes.
Yes. So in order to change mine, I would have to get it changed in Tasmania, where I was born. So having it changed in Victoria wouldn't work for me.
Wow.
Yeah, the joys of our federal system. Have to do everything 8 times.
Yes. And it's different for the 2 genders on what has to happen. For females turning to males, you have to have the chest surgery, you have to have the hormones first for so long that you actually look male. Then the chest surgery, and that's up to you and how you afford it. And then you have to have the full hysterectomy. You have to be sterilised.
Wow.
You cannot have men giving birth to babies. You must be sterilised.
Yeah. Very quickly, this came up, you know.
That's their logic and thinking, is it?
Came up in a court case, or this sort of issues were raised in a court case that came out of Western Australia with 2 trans men, AH and AB, that went to the High Court. Their legislation, however, is worded a bit differently. Same and similar to South Australia, but the other 6 were all very much surgery based until the ACT changed. So yeah, a bit of work to do there for everyone around the country, including Victoria.
It's quite embarrassing as well for the generalisation that every trans person wants to have surgery, when in reality it's more like half and half. There are a vast number of trans people who, like myself, don't want to have surgery and wouldn't like to have surgery. I've had back surgery and other things in my life, and it was a horrible experience, and I have no desire to go through bottom surgery or top surgery.
And I guess even if you did want to have surgery and you can't afford it, then that would be
that's
another example, and lots of us can't afford.
A lot of people travel overseas and sometimes to countries where the laws might be a little bit more lax when it comes to surgery.
Yeah, and the out-of-pocket cost for a trans woman for that one operation, around $15,000, which, you know, as Robyn's rightly said, many of us don't have, and it's not fully covered by Medicare and or private. So
government,
that's another angle.
Our surgeries aren't covered either because they're dealt as cosmetic.
Yeah.
But and hysterectomy is pretty full on.
It's very significant.
Yeah,
And
but you have to have it for that. You know, there's a very few guys that have a male birth certificate. I have one, but I've had to be forced sterilised.
Wow. Just quickly, what about marriage? If 2 people are married, and one of them transitions, are there any restrictions on them changing their birth certificate if they've gone through all the medical procedures and those sorts of things?
Yes. In, I'm sure, every state at the moment, they have to be divorced to go through with their sexual reassignment.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it would be classed as a gay marriage.
So you're happily married to someone, and you're lucky that you have a partner that's in love with you, and you have to separate for 12 months and not live with each other, and separate all your financials, and then get a divorce, and then you can get your new birth certificate.
Yeah, and effectively purge yourself in the family court, pay lawyers a whole heap of fees. Just because our marriage is stuck in the 1950s, it's a huge argument for full marriage equality for all Australian couples, trans and to some extent intersex, very much a strong argument for that.
Wow. Okay, so I guess in summary then, it's easy to change your name.
Yes.
It's easy to get a passport, and they're probably the most important documents that we need to manage. But birth certificates are a real problem and require intervention and all sorts of other things in order to get your birth certificate changed.
Yeah. It's a big decision for a piece of paper.
Wow. Well, Thank you so much for joining us, Sally, Robyn and Dale. I'm Sammy Cameron on transmission for Bent TV. Look forward to seeing you all next time.